All right. On today's episode, we interviewed Michael Heath, where we talked about what it looks like to go to commuter school and then ultimately go and buy not one, not two, but three different businesses and some of the challenges of those businesses, right? He first went off and bought a garage door company, right, about installing commercial garage doors. Then he went off and bought a pool supply company and a pool construction company, right? And really learning different mistakes made along the way from one business to help support and grow the next one, right? Outside of just how do you buy the business, but really how do you operate the business, some of the things to consider. So Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
One of the things that Michael talked about was, hey, these are smaller companies and I don't know how it's like in a bigger company and maybe not have these issues. And I'm like, well, they're all the same issues.
Yeah.
Like, the thing about buying a company, and a lot of the gurus out there want to make you think that there's no issues and there's no challenges, but there's a tremendous amount of challenges and they happen all the time. And it's about that problem solving. And I think what Michael really gets into is he's dealt with a lot of stuff back to back to back, and it's just preparing him. And he says it right at the beginning of this podcast. He said, "Hey, I'm just being prepared for the next big opportunity." And that's the kind of attitude you have to have as it's coming at you, and it's coming at you pretty hard.
Yeah, no, being an entrepreneur is not easy, right? There's a lot of drama. And we kind of touch on it towards the end where it's kind of lonely at the top, right? Not having people to be able to go vent to and understand what problems you're facing and why it's so stressful and how do you solve it. And so
but we still love it.
Yeah. So, we're addicted to it. But anyways, so that's kind of this episode touches on a lot of different topics. So go ahead and listen in.
Hey guys, go ahead and just pause the podcast for a second. When you're buying a business, you need to ensure the financial health of the company. The quality of earnings is mission critical. It doesn't matter what size business you're buying. Patrick O'Connell Advisory Group, they're dynamic. They do a great job. They're going to look over your shoulder. They're going to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And this guy's done over 200 buyers successfully, just like you. So reach out to him. And it's o'conneladvisorygroup.com. Click the link in our show notes. Can't live without this.
Hey, Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. For those listeners, so Michael is a 3-time entrepreneur, multiple businesses. And so we're going to kind of dive in and start to really learn a little bit more about some of his experience and what he's done. So Michael, you went ahead and maybe give a little bit of overview for the audience?
Yeah. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, from a little town probably about 30 minutes south of here. I ended up going to University of Missouri, St. Louis, which is kind of a commuter school. Just a lot of people are working and going to school at the same time. After school, went down to Bogota, Colombia for about 3 years, learned Spanish, started my little entrepreneurial journey. I was importing refurbished iPhones at the time and jailbreaking them and selling them to distributors down there. And then got into the emerald business for a little bit. Just realized that it wasn't really going to take off and didn't see the potential that I had myself down there. So came back.
The emerald business worked for Elon. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's a fun business, it's a cash heavy business. So seeing people walk around with bags of money and just being in those rooms that you normally wouldn't be a part of. But I was the crazy gringo that wanted to sit in and listen. So it was just a cool experience. But yeah, came back. Really started from scratch. It was a little depressing seeing all my friends, making good money and already started their careers. And I was starting from the bottom. Got into sales. I did insurance for a little bit. Wasn't a good fit for me. Got in the mortgage business. Did pretty well. I stayed there for probably about 5 years. And then I was doing 203K loans, which are renovation loans. So I used that for myself. Started, bought a duplex. Started growing my real estate portfolio a little bit. And then started flipping. Moved over. I've always wanted to know what the corporate life was like. Just was curious if I wanted to climb the ladder. I got into a roofing manufacturer company, Malarkey Roofing Products. I stayed there for about 5 years. It was good, gave me structure. And I had the opportunity. We bought State Line actually in 2020. And that was I was still with the Malarkey for 2 years after we did that. So I was working full-time at Malarkey, part-time at State Line, putting the back-end operations in place.
So let's pause there really quick. So you were at a roofing company. What led you to go buy this other business, right? Were you actively the evenings underwriting different opportunities, making offers, or did you just kind of stumble across it? How'd you find it?
No, I have a really good friend of mine that he owns Premier Business Brokers, and I told him he was always excited talking about all these deals that were coming up, and he was kind of given the description of like who these people were, typically executives, retired, they were bored, they wanted to put their skills to use, so they were buying companies. And he was telling me how much you had to invest. You could go the SBA route, you could go conventional. Um, some of these deals were getting done with 5-10% down. So, the seller was carrying the rest of the note, and it just seemed like something that I could do. I've got a sales background. I could find a business that's dusty and put some back end operations in place and clean it up, put some technology in. And it's like, why would I not do this? So I just asked him, would you please keep me in mind if something came up? And a lot of the stuff that he was sending me were like commercial cleaning companies, just some real low level skill type stuff. Um, I actually went under contract with one, and turned out it was just, there's a lot of hands on. They didn't have the operations in place. I didn't really want to take a business that didn't have management in place. So I passed on it eventually, but I was running his company for almost a month, and decided not to do it because I was almost a janitor at some point. One of the guys didn't show up, so we had to clean.
Yep.
I wasn't getting paid for it, but at the same time, it was a good experience to kind of get my feet wet and see what this is really about, see what I'm getting into. But then, a year went by, he called me and he said, hey, I got this garage door company. It's a 1 multiple. They did 2.5 in revenue. He's making 250 a year. That's the SDE. The owner and the wife aren't taking a salary at all. But he's like, this is only going to be 15% down, and the seller's willing to carry a 5% note. So, would you be interested in it? And I had a friend call me 2 days before that saying that he worked for a competitor, Zoomwalt Garage Doors here in St. Louis. He wasn't getting paid for what he was doing. He was running operations, had 3 years in the business, and it just seemed like the stars aligned, and this was an opportunity that we needed to jump on. So me and a couple other partners, including the operator, that wrote a contract, and it took probably about 8 months to close because it was in the middle of COVID. We were a little uncertain on what was going to happen. So we delayed the closing a little bit just to kind of see what the numbers were looking like, and they were consistent. So we pulled the trigger and closed in November 2020.
Nice. Crazy times.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot
Everybody's
of
still needs
uncertainty.
garage doors, whether it's
It is
COVID or
very
not.
true.
So,
And I think
Well,
during COVID, people were like looking at the garage doors going, I need to fix that.
Well, and we're not residential, we're commercial. So we do new
Okay.
construction. And so with COVID, everybody was staying at home. Deliveries were picking up with FedEx, Amazon. So all these Amazon fulfillment centers were getting built. And so, they need garage doors. So we told the owner to book as much business as he possibly could. And he did. And I think the first year out, we did about 7.4 million. But he didn't bid it correctly. He didn't take into account we had a back end team now. So we did 7.5 and probably made $100,000. So it was pretty depressing after an extremely busy year, busier than he's ever been in the history of the company, and making that little money. But it just really came down to he wasn't bidding correctly, and he never thought that he could get 20-25% margins or gross profit margin. So it took some time.
That brings us, it's a great point. It's a good stopping point, because I think what, people, the listeners and all that good stuff, you hear this from the books and people talking about it, but the first thing you want to do when you get into a business is raise prices.
Yep.
Right. And, it's one of the hardest things to do is to then figure out, well, hold on, they're not using an ERP. So I got to first get my ERP in system so I can then make sure I'm pricing right. But it's absolutely amazing. We in our company that we acquired in 23, we didn't get the ERP in until about 15 months, all said and done, after we got in. Mm-hmm. And we realized like we were losing money on stuff because in 2022, prices went through the roof, right? All of a sudden inflation hit, but we weren't raising prices of our services, or really we thought we were, but the way we priced was very piece of paper, back of the napkin. And then you put it into a system and you get the pricing right. You're like, oh my God, like we were just leaving money on the table. Yeah. So is that kind of one of the things you guys experienced when you got in there? Once you had a year like that, you're sitting there going, man, we've got to price better. We have to have a better estimating process.
Yeah, it was definitely the case. And we weren't doing job cost accounting. So we really had no clue what these jobs were going to profit at the end of the day. So bringing in a bookkeeper that actually had experience, because we were using the husband's wife for the longest time, and she was not qualified to do that.
Yep.
So we brought in a CPA that was going into retirement. She wanted something part time, and it was a perfect fit because she worked at the garage door company that our operator worked at.
Oh,
So
nice.
that was the biggest thing that we could have done, because we really understood our numbers and knew where we had to be, and we could say no and turn down jobs, because just because it was $1 million project doesn't mean we're going to make any money on it. And if it's like we're going to make 2% on this, well, is this worth our time when we can take something that we're going to make 10 on?
Yeah. So question though, so you said you turned down some of the other companies because they didn't have a system in place, right? Like that cleaning company.
Mm-hmm.
What attracted you to this one, right? On $2.5 million of revenue, how big was the company employees wise? And were there systems in place, or was it more so, hey, I just happen to have a good friend that's a good fit for this that can help me build that system?
It just seemed like the risk was really low for us. And again, this is me and two other partners, and the operator now has equity, but the risk seemed very low. It was more risk on the operator because he was leaving a job, but at the end of the day, he was ready to leave. Um, so, at the worst case scenario, the three of us, the four of us, were going to lose 250,000. So I wasn't really all that concerned. It sucks if it didn't pan out, but the fact that he was making that money year over year, it just seemed like the risk was really low. And um, with the other companies, just I didn't have an operator, which meant I was going to have to go in and get my hands dirty. And it wasn't, with the cleaning company, it wasn't something that I felt good about. It's just seems like, I'm a salesperson, I'm dealing with business owners, and then now I'm going to go down and be a janitor. And it just didn't sound, it was just depressing because like I said, I worked there for a month, and I just didn't feel good about myself. I couldn't develop that business ownership mentality that, you hire employees and then you're managing all these people, and they were very low skill employees. So it was difficult. But with the garage doors, um, it was a good fit with the owner. When we met him, highly educated person, took a lot of pride in his work, took a lot of pride in his business. And, with the operator that we had in place, I was confident with him. I knew him since like kindergarten. I trusted him. So, it was more me putting faith in him and knowing what the business had done in the past year over year. And that gave me the confidence to, take the risk and take the leap.
Got it. And so maybe so you kind of mentioned the seller a few times. How involved was he? How did he, was he, what was the deal you guys had, right? Outside of the actual purchase? Did he have to stay around for 6 months? It sounded like he was involved pretty actively, I guess, at the beginning. I mean, what did that look like?
He
That's
told us
what we
from day
struggle with, right?
one.
With our business, it's about how involved should a seller be? Do you want
Mhm.
to, how long do you keep them around? And is that a net benefit or a net kind of negative for a business?
Both. Yeah, it was. We definitely had our challenges.
Good
I
answer.
think it was 100% necessary to have him involved, and the deal with us was that he was going to work with us indefinitely. His attitude. He was in his 70s. He said, "Look, like I enjoy doing what I do, and I really don't want to leave, but I just can't continue to work the hours that I'm working, and I'm tired of the travel." He's like, "But I'm here as long as you need me." And he's still working for us, surprisingly. Not because we need him, but because he's resourceful, and he's got 30 plus years of experience in the business. So that did cause some challenges, though, because we were dependent upon him. My operator had the training over at Zoomwalt, but he did not have the install training. He could run the team, deal with all of that, but he did not have the install training for the commercial garage doors. And with the team that we had, they needed a leader. And so the operator had to learn from him, and it took a solid 2 years for him to be comfortable enough to take on any project. But yeah, it was with the owner. There was more of a challenge with his wife than anything, because she was working as our bookkeeper, and we knew within the first day that I met her, she had never sent an email before in her life, and she was trying to snail mail me everything. And I kind of had a panic attack after she told me all of this, because, we were starting from scratch. The boat, we'd already been in it. We had to set up QuickBooks. She didn't know how to do that. It was a huge mess, at which, again, we didn't know what we were making. She wasn't dealing with AP, AR. She said that was my job. So yeah, we wanted to let her go, and we told the previous owner that we wanted to make this move. He talked to her about it, and she said, if I leave, then you're leaving, and you're not going to work for that company. It was a huge blow to her ego. She thought she was good at what she did. She just was not up to date with technology, and she had no care in the world to do it. I was spending too much time. I never operated QuickBooks before, and I was learning and trying to teach her. So she kind of held us hostage for about a year and a half. And then finally, we just got so fed up with it that we just said, you know what, if we got to lose the previous owner, then it is what it is. We'll figure it out. So yeah, it was both good and bad.
Quick question on that. Did you happen to include her in the sales process when y'all bought the business, or was it just you and the husband?
Just us and the husband.
So in the future, do you feel like, you might add that? Is that one of your now feathers in your hat? Like you need to include all decision makers, or do you feel like that was something you probably could have won her over, or do you think it was just a hurdle you were going to have to jump anyways?
I would say with the key employees, I would say on a bigger business, the key employees would be really important to meet with and see if there's feel them out, see what they want, see if it's a personality fit. In a smaller business, I think it's difficult to do. Because I don't think that the owners really want you to talk to them, because if that person leaves, then, their business is going to fall. It's going to sink.
Yeah, but technically the wife owned the company too, right?
She did. But he just, said that she was the bookkeeper. We didn't realize
they always do.
Yeah. It was, I didn't, it was a difficult time for sure. But yes, I would push on having those conversations. In the 2 companies that we bought after that, we didn't have those conversations with key employees. Again, I wish we would have done it, because we would have discovered a handful of things that I don't know if that would have deterred us from buying the business, but it would have definitely been helpful information.
This is a good.
Well, actually, really quick though. Go ahead. I just want to ask one question before we move on to the next business. So, you bought the business. It went from $2.5 million. The next year, did $7 million. You didn't make any money from it. Were you able to sustain that revenue growth, but start to actually grow your margins to where you're like, hey, this has been awesome now, right? He's growing 3x. I mean, that's a 3x growth. That's awesome, but you got to make some money in it. So were you able to address that, or was the revenue still high and you guys are still kind of working through the profitability side?
So 21 and 22 was the same story. The challenge with this business is that we bid the project. We find out whether we get it or not within months. And then the project starts. That could be next month. That could be 6 months. And then once we complete the project, then it takes another probably 3 to 6 months to receive our retention. They hold back 10% every time they do every time they pay us out for material or labor. So we didn't really start seeing those results until 2023, which was a huge year for us because we did 9.5 in 23. We netted probably about 950. So I think it was a little bit over. But yeah, we didn't really see the results of what we put in place in 22 until 2023 and then the years forward.
Yeah, there's a phrase.
That's how it works, you know?
Yeah, there's a phrase that I like, which is pain points you're dealing with today are usually decisions you made from 3, 4, 5 years ago. So you also get the opposite. The good things you're dealing with today are usually from decisions you put in place 3, 4, 5 years ago.
And that's the beautiful thing. You know, if somebody comes into buying a company and they have a short-term vision, right? You know, I think, you know, when you think about the people that come in, hey, I'm going to buy this, fix it up, and I'm going to flip it, right? I think when you come into these businesses with that mentality, because we all do, we have all suffered from the idea that I'm going to buy it, getting a great deal, and I'm going to fix it. And then you're 5 years into the thing and you're like, hey, now it's a 10-year vision. I think my advice to anybody listening to this podcast is you've got to have a 10-year vision on these companies because it just takes a lot of time to get the ground running, even though it's a company that might have been around for 10 years or 15 years. It's just going to take more time than you think.
Oh, yeah. And I was cocky going into it. You know, I thought that, you know, I'm this young gun. I'm going to go get after it. I'm going to do all these things. And, and then just dealing with the problems you can't, and the changes that you want to make in the company, you also have to read the room, because sometimes these changes you want to put in place, most employees do not like change, and you can only change so much in the time frame that you want to. And I mean, the example with the pool companies, we're a seasonal business, so any decision that I make, we're not going to make it in the peak of the season. It's done. We're going to roll with it. But all my decisions and things that we want to change are going to happen in the off season, and I don't get to see that until April.
Following year.
So
that's a good talk. So before we jump into, so that was your first company. So then when did you acquire the second company?
Yeah. What led you to go acquire it?
So same deal. Speaking with Premier Business Brokers, I worked myself out of my position at State Line. I brought in a person that used to run their father's general contracting company, and we brought her on as a consultant, and she was smarter, better. She was the person that needed to be in my place. So we hired her, gave her a good compensation package, and she just ran with it. She was the perfect fit. So I realized that, the only thing that I can really do is business development. And I didn't really see the light, because if I was, kind of with the education that I have now, I would have started looking at buying up other garage door companies in the service area, or even going residential. But I just didn't have the education behind me. I was just thinking of this as like, hey, this is an investment. You need to go buy another company. So the pool companies came up because I was paying attention to the listings that were coming through Premier Business Brokers. I kept asking the broker, what's the deal with this business? It looks fantastic. There's two of them. There's a retail company and there's a service company. Why would somebody not just buy these together? Just didn't make any sense. Pool King was listed for, I think, 2.2 plus 1.5 in inventory, and they had some real estate attached to it. Florida Pool was listed for 1.2, and I believe that included FF&E. They really didn't carry much inventory because they buy through distribution. So it seemed like a perfect fit. The broker said that these businesses are under contract right now with somebody else. They think that this person's getting cold feet, and you actually know them. So I reached out to that person that had these under contract, and just was like, what's the deal? What are you doing? He had some family issues going on. His mother and father were not doing well, and he couldn't justify moving to St. Louis because he didn't know what was going to happen. And it's a good thing that he didn't, because his parents really needed him at the time. But so the deal fell apart. I knew the investor, and I pitched myself to the investor, and that's how this kind of went. And so it was kind of a layup in a sense, because they had already done their due diligence on it, and the investor was already bought in on this. So all I really did is I kind of stepped in as an operator. I didn't do the traditional independent search or search fund or anything like that.
We also got the debt right in place. I mean, roughly $3.5-4 million acquisition between the two.
Yes.
And so did you do traditional SBA and you stepped into that and took on those PGs, or was there some other structure that was there?
It was cash. So
Okay,
the investor, the decision was made in probably February that we were going to do this. And then I had to put it together a business plan and pitch it to him. And then by the time we started getting through the new LOI, the new APA, May was coming around the corner. And if you miss May in the pool business in the Midwest, then you are going to be incurring, you're going to miss out on the busiest months of the year. So we thought, so if we can close on this thing and we get at this price, then we're going to get all the upside and not experience, 4 months of losses. So, we just told him, we're like, hey, we need to pay cash and then let's refinance as soon as possible. So that's what we did. We refinanced. The cash out refi was done in January 2024. So it was a 80% loan to value for both companies. We kept them separate only because the investor's attitude was, if one of these fails, then it's not going to drag the other one down. We do have intentions on bringing the two companies together. We have not done that yet because we are still working through some kinks on one of the companies. But that's the game plan.
Y'all must have went conventional, because I don't think SBA is going to give a cash out feature, does it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I thought it might have been conventional. So cool.
And
That's
also with the investor, they had some stipulations because he would have to take the deal that we have. It's a 49-51 split.
That's what I was going to ask. What
49
was the
on my
structure?
side.
So he'd have to take on, he'd have to be underwritten, right, and take on a PG because he owned
with SBA,
with the SBA.
Yeah.
Well, I think SBA only allows an investor of somebody his net worth, from what I understand, because we looked at this, and I think that he could only own a percentage of the company. I don't think that he would have been able to take majority ownership on it.
Unless he signed on the note with you, right?
Well, he did, but with the conventional loan, he was more than willing to do that. That wasn't the problem. We just got pushback from the SBA because of his net worth and the percentage of ownership that they said that he could have. So it's been a few years.
Every bank has a different kind of ruling and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And
But so let me ask this though. So he brought all the cash. He bought the whole thing. It sounds like he gave you 49% or 50. One of you got 49, the other one got 51. But he, if you turn around and stole the business the next day, you weren't getting half of that. And so what was the actual structure that, just for listeners, right, that do have a wealthy investor that would fund the thing, like what's the structure that worked for you guys, right? So people can kind of help have something to ground them in terms of structuring these.
That was the structure. So 49-51, we sold the next day, then I would take 49. So
oh wow, so he had that much confidence that was he the 51%? He could at least stop you from selling if it didn't make sense.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's managing partners, so he can do whatever he wants.
That's actually a really sweet deal for you, Michael. I'm not gonna lie.
It was great. No, don't get me wrong. Like I hear all these stories about independent searchers, and typically, from what I understand, it's like they take the operator is going to take 20%. And that's pretty standard, and that's
vested
too. It's not like you get that.
Right.
You have to earn that. So,
and that's what I told him. I said, why are you doing this? Because if this business, if we turn around and sell it, and I didn't do anything, or if I run your company into the ground, and you're giving me 49% of it, like it just seems like it's a great deal. From what I heard, from what I learned later on, because I still felt since I was operating, I should deserve more. Well, I've come to learn that's not the case, and I should be grateful for what I have. But I was a little, I guess, concerned on that, but I did sign a personal guarantee. So I'm on the hook, and his attitude was, Mike, you run this thing in the ground, you're as broke as I am. So, it's on you, and you sign this. This is your financial life on the line. So get to work.
Nice. So you've got so that's 3 companies that are under your portfolio.
Yes.
You're in the pool company now, 18 months?
Yes.
And you mentioned, wishing to have talked to some of the staff. So, what were some of the mistakes once you kind of got into the pool thing that you're like, man, I wish we had done this differently or done
mistakes, that? It's like, what did you learn from your first acquisition, the mistakes you made there that you've applied? Then answer Ferris's question.
And then what did you not learn that you didn't apply?
If you're not learning from every deal you do, then you're kind of stuck in insanity, right?
Yeah. I think, what did I learn from that first deal? There's so much that kind of came into play. I dropped my 9-to-5 that I had. As soon as we were under contract, I dropped it because I still had in my head, I'm like, wow, I can be making money from the 9-to-5, and I can be taking salary here, and I'm getting a salary from State Line, and I can be making this. And it's like, there's no chance in hell that would happen. So, just being dedicated and being focused on something, I think that was like the biggest learning curve for me, because I've always worked multiple jobs, had multiple things going on the side, and just thinking that you really need to be all in on this. I spoke with somebody yesterday from the podcast that I've done a couple months ago, and he was trying to do the same thing, and I just told him, I'm like, if you're going to do this, man, like if you really want this thing to succeed, you really need to be all in, and you can do stuff on the side, because we all talk about, hey, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to put a manager in place, and then I'm going to go buy another one, or I'm just going to go relax, let this thing pay itself off, and I'm going to be making so much money later. And people do that. I know people that have, but you are taking a lot of risk. And if you want to earn the respect of the employees, you better be there. So, it doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but they need to know that you are not just some guy with a bunch of money that's coming in and you're going to be an absentee owner. So, from State Line, cash management was the biggest thing. Understanding what the terms were, understanding what the cash cycle looks like. That was the biggest thing for us, because we got into several instances with State Line that we were robbing Peter to pay Paul. We were having to put capital in from the ownership group. That was the first thing that I'm much better with the financials. I'm good at reading the financial statements, understanding the cash flow statements, and just really doing projections. So that was my biggest learning from State Line.
Yeah, and like we kind of talked about it before the show, right? You don't have to go to an Ivy League to know how to do this. Like most businesses, the actual operational side is a lot of the same things, right? You need
Yep.
to go level up and get comfortable with financials, how to read a balance sheet, how to read a, financial, understanding what AR, AP is, but the mechanics are all the same, right? And Michael, I mean, you kind of showed it. You were going to just a commuter school and you went and bought 3 businesses and you understand them intimately, for better or for worse, right? And over time, you kind of pick up something here, pick up something there, and you use that to continue to propel you forward.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that other experience you got was QuickBooks. Being able to go through and learn QuickBooks. If you've never gotten an accounting degree or even understand it, just go set up a QuickBooks and drop in the bank statements and reconcile it. And all of a sudden you start going like, this makes total sense, right?
Well, I did get a degree in accounting, but I did not know how to use QuickBooks. So, they teach you a lot of theory. So
you're accounting undergrad?
Yeah.
But I think that actually was very helpful.
And I didn't learn anything until I opened a bar.
Yeah, you don't learn it, but
I learned how to do accounting.
You at least understand the concept. Like at the time, like I've taken an accounting class and like none of that really applied. But like once you go back and you need it, you're like, okay, these things all tie together, and now it all makes sense.
Why I was doing journal entries, I didn't know what the hell they were until I had the bar. And then when we opened the bar, I was like, oh, now I understand what cash management is.
Funny, I didn't know you studied accounting till just now. So
yeah, undergrad accounting. Great. I'm glad I did it, but I mean,
why are you so bad at it, Casey? No,
I know, right? But Michael, you said a couple things, and I love this. So one of our partners here, and he's our operating partner at H&M. He's releasing a book, and it talks about his MPC program. And the first thing he does is to grab hold of the money in the first 90 days, right? The money. Like people don't realize that these businesses suck cash like insane. And you're typically 90% of people are going to be underfunded. They did not account for certain things, right? When they think about add backs and they think about all this stuff in SDE, it's not a real, it may or may not be a real number in the sense of cash flow. And, getting around cash flow is critical. And, we're currently right now closing, could be tomorrow, could be next week, on a company, and they don't practice cash flow management. They're like in the business of your business, which is, they're project based, right? So they've got to do that job costing. And so that understanding that how to set up a project, how to make the AP, AR, how it all connects, such a huge part of this game that we're playing.
And I would say that I still, doing projections, doing accurate projections and doing inaccurate, not inaccurate, but like putting together a realistic budget. We just brought on a fractional CFO so that we could really put a professional to this, because I feel like I've done a pretty decent job at it. But whenever I look at my report and I look at his, there's a big difference. So it's going to cost us some money, but I think that we've probably already saved 20, 30 grand just by bringing him in and him pointing out a handful of things. So, awesome. And again, I didn't have management experience either. I've always been a salesperson. So, you learn on the fly, you make mistakes, you learn from them, do self-study. There's endless amounts of information. There's a ton of books on all this. I'm still learning every day. But management is a difficult thing. It's not easy to manage people.
I completely agree. And then maybe before we kind of wrap up, and what were some of the other big mistakes just going in that you wish you had talked to people to kind of just help answer that question?
Well, with State Line, I would say, a lot of the mistakes that I made were people focused, because, with State Line, I became a passive owner. I only work probably, 5 hours a week in the business at the moment. But I thought that I could still do the same at the pool companies. And I wasn't really in there and getting to know these employees. And a lot of these people have been here for 20, 30 years. So whenever you have somebody like myself that sits in an office and I'm crunching numbers and I'm working on this and trying to make the business better, uh, I neglected to really spend time, or neglected to speak with the employees about what they missed about the previous ownership and what it was now. We've been doing one-to-ones with each employee this year, and they've really painted some pictures that I wasn't aware of, and just getting their attitude. And it was surprising to hear how much they had to say about me. Not horrible things, but just things that were fixable. That if I would have addressed this last year, there were just the satisfaction of the employees would have been a lot better. So, really, I find it, and if it's a small business, this is, some people buying $10-20 million company, maybe it's not the same case, but the respect that you get from these people,
it's the same. It's the same, man. It is. So I'm just going to share with you the same behaviors are the same in any organization, right? There's just more of it. And to kind of piggyback on yours, like some mistakes that I made in our, it would have been my second acquisition, but first for Equity Launchpad was, and I think this is critical, is you've got to talk to the seller and you've got to give them education about the handoff. And I think the way you do that, and it's hard in your first acquisition because you don't have like this execution plan, but you should have some form of a game plan, and you got to get the seller's buy-in if he's going to stay on with you. Right? You've got to get those commitments along the way, and then you got to meet with that. So if he stays on for a year or 2 years, you've got to have those one-on-ones, reviewing it and going, hey, how's it working? How's it not? Because that seller is going to think they're the owner. They're even though you bought it and they have no skin in the game, right? And that other one too is also communication with the team about like before you make the changes, get team buy-in, right? Because I made those mistakes. It's like you and I, Michael, we're sales side. We just make it happen. And you completely forget, like, oh my God, that person that's been here 20 years is going to look at me like I'm an idiot. Yeah. So those are some of those things I learned.
Well, and not coming from the industry, that was their biggest concern, is like you're buying a pool company and you have zero experience, anything related to pools, selling them, working on them, anything.
Swimming one.
Yeah, I've swam in them. That's what I told him. I'm like, I've swam in a lot of pools, but I know absolutely nothing about this business. And I was honest with the employees and said that we're going to, I've operated a company for 3 years. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to get in, I'm going to learn. And, the difference was, like you mentioned, you really need to speak with that owner and get a realistic picture of like what they did on their day-to-day basis, because the previous owner used to spend his afternoons at the retail store, and just because he enjoyed it, he liked to be there. He'd be filling in for people when they'd call in sick. I'm running through companies. I don't have the luxury to be able to go do that. But I can go help out. If I have time in my schedule, I'll go help out. They really appreciate it. But, those conversations weren't had because we were focused on the back end. And, another thing I would say is that the time that you have with the seller, when they say indefinitely, or they say we'll give you a year or two, you don't know what the hell's going to happen, because the guy that we bought the business from, he got brain cancer 6 months after we bought the business, and he didn't even know that who he sold the company to. So I thought that we had another season for me to pick up, what I missed or what I wasn't comfortable with. And we, tried to put together SOPs, and, some people aren't good teachers, and he had a really hard time explaining the process. And, last January was a very different place than we were this January.
Wow.
So,
well, wow, Michael, first off, way to be an entrepreneur. This is all about,
Right.
kicking ass, taking name, the roller coaster rides, and having the ups and downs. And, just the other day, I think I had my first week where I just did not feel like everything was going to cave in on me. And it actually felt really good. Like I missed that. It'd been many, like 6 months of just shit we've been dealing with. That's insane. And it like didn't stop. It was like one after another. I talked to Feras and I was like, this sucks, but we're entrepreneurs.
We counsel each other. It's good to have other guys.
No, it's good to have somebody to call and be like, oh my God, you won't believe what else happened. And, but it's refreshing because there are moments where you get a breath of fresh air. And then what we do is we go figure out tasks that we need to do that start, creating new concerns and issues. But that's the nature of entrepreneurship.
Solve problems, move forward. So.
Yep.
Good. Well, Michael, we're going to jump into our rocket round. Let's hear. This is where we talk to our guest and ask him 3 questions. Pretty detailed questions here.
All right. So first question, what do you like to do in your free time?
I'm out anything outdoors. We bike. I bicycle around the St. Louis area and stuff a lot. Run. Just got into swimming. Really anything that's active. I mean, that's usually what occupies my spare time. But yeah, we travel a little bit whenever we have time. That's really about that's the majority of the time.
Let's be honest.
Well, I started playing golf probably about 2 years ago. So
you should,
cool.
Nice. You should meet me in Moab in 2 weeks. I'm doing a biking trip out there where we're going. Basically, we don't know if we're going to fly in. It's going to be 3 days carrying all of our water and gear. So we'll see if I make it back.
No, it sounds exciting, and I want to get to do more of that. I feel like I lost myself over the past 2 years just because of all the chaos. But
it's good,
putting some time into myself, and it's. I used to give the owner a lot of trouble because he was retiring at 73, and he just walking away with 3 best years he ever had in the business, and he just walked away with a $3 million check, and he doesn't know what the hell he's going to go do, and I was like, what do you mean? You've got several millions of dollars in the bank. You're 73, go do whatever you want. But he never had any hobbies. He never really had much of a personal life. And it's like, those are the things that you forget. And honestly, those are the things that are going to get you through the bullshit that you got to deal with on a day-to-day basis here. So
very good point. All right. Next question. What's your most memorable moment in your business journey so far?
Several, but I would say the ones that stick out with the pool companies is our key employee got physically ran over by a vehicle. And I found out that the previous owner of the other pool company got diagnosed with brain cancer, and that was within 2 months of each other. So that was it was a panic moment. I'm proud of myself for getting through it. You always have a dark day, but there's going to be another one ahead of you. But that was, I would say that's about the most memorable moment with those companies.
Real stuff, man. It's real stuff when you work with people, right?
With State Line, we had, I was in New York waiting for a train. We were going to go see my wife's brother. And the previous owner called me and told me that we owed about $500,000 to our vendors. And that his wife was doing the books, and we didn't have $500,000. So we had to scramble and figure out how we were going to pay these people. And so I would say with State Line, that was probably about the most memorable one.
Wow. Got it. The last question, favorite tool or resource?
I mean, these podcasts, they're huge. Just hearing the stories and hearing the shit that people go through. I mean, it's you're not in it alone. I would say that the groups that I'm involved in, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, Vistage, Entrepreneurs Organization, you really get in your feels with it. So these people know me intimately. We share things that you would never tell anybody. I mean, things that I don't even probably tell my wife or, my family, because, that's the whole point of doing this. Vistage is very business oriented, but it's nice. The moderator, the organization, she's kind of like a business therapist. So it doesn't matter. Half the time we're not talking about business. We're just talking about the shit that I'm going through. So those resources, I will tell you that they were a game changer in my life, professionally and personally. So I would say that, if you're going down this path, get somebody that's in the same stuff that you're in, because, they always say it's lonely on top, and they say that because you can't tell your employees the shit that you're thinking.
It's nice thing about having a partner too, just to kind of
and I have partners, but they're all silent partners, and they don't want to hear, they don't want to hear
send me the check.
They can't handle the stress of it. I mean,
send me the check. That's why I'm a silent partner.
Yeah, and it's not even about they don't want to hear it. It's like they don't understand that is normal operations, right? Like they think things are imploding. If you're talking to them, they think things must be really bad, and they're versus it's a problem. that's entrepreneurialism.
Well,
so
I did that with State Line.
You need an operating partner that is deep in it and gets what's going on, good, bad, and ugly, and has been through challenges that knows how to solve, right? Like it's all about solving things.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I did that with State Line with one of the partners, and he's a friend of mine, so he listened, but at the same time, they get very uneasy, and it's not the sky's not always falling. It could just be a bad day. It could be a lot of stuff coming at you, but these other groups, it's good to have that circle around you.
It's very nice, very good.
Awesome. Well, Michael, how can guests get a hold of you?
LinkedIn's probably the best way. I'm open. It's there's always time in the schedule, despite everything going on. And if it's a half hour to an hour call, I really don't mind it. People have had me look at deals, give my opinion. I've got quite a bit of experience with the garage door company now, and then now in the pool industry. So anybody that's looking in those areas, I can definitely help. I'm speaking with another independent sponsor about a roofing company that they just closed on, I think Friday last week, and gave a lot of really helpful advice to them. So yeah, I'm always open.
That is awesome.
All right, I'll put that in the
Thank you
show
so
notes.
much for joining us, man. This has been a great podcast.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks,
I
Michael.
appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.